Gane won the interim heavyweight title at the White House. And he won it with a performance that, when you watch it frame by frame, is genuinely impressive on a technical level. The jab, the movement, the speed that made Pereira look like a man trying to catch smoke, all of it was real and all of it worked. But here is what the celebration of that performance cannot obscure. Gane also landed 8 illegal strikes to the back of Alex Pereira's head while Herb Dean stood 3 feet away and said nothing. Not a warning. Not a point deduction. Not even a pause in the action. 8 shots to the nuca, the back of the head, connected in the ground and pound sequence that preceded the finish, and the referee allowed all of it to happen in full view. Let's go through the fight properly, because the illegal strikes exist within a context, and that context includes genuine tactical excellence from Gane that deserves honest analysis alongside the legitimate complaint about what happened on the ground. Pereira started the fight the way he always starts fights. Low kicks to the body, probing for distance, looking for the single heavy shot that has ended fights at every weight class he has competed in. Gane's response was the answer that the movement-based analytical case had predicted. He denied Pereira the distance. He was using the inside leg kick consistently, but targeting the thigh just above the knee rather than the typical shin-to-shin calf kick position, which meant the impact was landing in a position that was harder for Pereira to check and harder for him to absorb without disrupting his base. More importantly, every time Pereira loaded up for a significant shot, Gane was already moving, circling out, resetting the distance, refusing to be where Pereira thought he was. The speed differential was the defining feature of the first round, and it is worth stating precisely what that means. When you analyze the footage frame by frame, most fighters generate a knockout punch in 4 or 5 frames from wind-up to full extension. Gane was generating his shots in 2 frames. That is not a minor advantage in the context of a fighter whose defensive system, like Pereira's, is built around reading the telegraphing of incoming shots and timing counters. If the shot is arriving in half the time the defensive system is calibrated for, the system fails. Pereira's wrist outguard, which is designed to intercept and redirect incoming strikes while he positions for his own power shots, was consistently being bypassed by a jab that arrived before the interception could be organized. Pereira did have his moments, and they are worth acknowledging because they identify what he should have done more of. In the moments where he responded with combinations rather than single shots, where he took Gane's entry and countered with 2 or 3 punches rather than resetting and waiting, he created the kind of pressure that Gane's movement struggled to manage cleanly. Gane's countermeasure when Pereira started doing this was to collapse the distance entirely, getting so close that Pereira's power shots had no room to generate, and then pushing out to re-establish the range where his speed advantage was maximized. The clinch work was a tactical surprise. Gane removed himself from clinch positions quickly and efficiently in ways that Pereira was not able to exploit. Every time Pereira tried to dirty box or slow the pace, Gane found a way out and reset to the distance where he was winning. The second round began with Gane having internalized Pereira's patterns. He was circling consistently to Pereira's right. Pereira's orthodox stance makes his left hook the primary power threat when opponents circle that direction, but Gane was dropping his level whenever he circled there, making the hook miss over the top of his head. He was reading every setup. When Pereira initiated with a jab, Gane was slipping and countering before the jab was fully extended. The footwork in the final position before the knockdown is worth examining specifically. Gane won the foot position battle on the outside, meaning Pereira's lead foot ended up inside Gane's lead foot rather than outside it, which meant Pereira's right hand, his primary power weapon, was structurally blocked from landing cleanly while Gane's left hand had a clear path to Pereira's chin. The knockdown came from that positional advantage plus the speed advantage. Pereira was moving toward his own jab when Gane's straight left met his chin coming in the other direction. He was moving into the punch before it landed, which multiplied the force of impact beyond what the punch itself would have generated against a stationary target. Now the ground sequence. And this is where the analysis has to be direct and unambiguous regardless of the final result. The first punch Gane lands after the knockdown connects partially on the side of the head, arguable, borderline legal based on where exactly the impact registers. What comes after is not borderline. The second strike lands directly on the back of Pereira's head. The third, fourth, and fifth strikes follow in the same targeting zone. Gane transitions to a different position, and the elbows that follow, the ones that drew the most attention in the post-fight review, land with the arm falling in the direction of the back of Pereira's head because of the angle at which Gane is positioned relative to a Pereira who is not moving his head. Then come more ground strikes, several of which again connect with the back of the skull rather than the side. The final count, going through the footage methodically, is 8 strikes that land illegally. The important question is whether these illegal strikes changed the outcome. The honest answer is, probably not, based on the trajectory of the fight. Gane was winning convincingly. The knockdown came from a clean, legal punch that Pereira was moving into. The subsequent ground and pound, including the legal strikes, was substantial enough that the finish would likely have arrived without the illegal ones. But probably not, and definitely not, are different things. Back-of-the-head strikes are illegal specifically because they cause a specific kind of neurological damage that is distinct from conventional head trauma. The cumulative effect of 8 illegal strikes in a sequence, on a man who is already knocked down, is not 0. We do not know how much additional damage those strikes caused because we cannot run the fight again without them. And the referee's failure to intervene, to issue even a single warning to Gane, who has now been involved in multiple significant illegal strike controversies in his UFC career, is a failure that has real consequences beyond this single fight. The analogy that applies here is a groin kick. If you drop an opponent with a legal punch and then, in the chaos of the finish, your follow-up strike connects with the groin, the referee stops the fight regardless of how injured the opponent already is. The illegality of the strike creates the stoppage, not the severity of the situation. Back-of-the-head strikes should operate identically. The fact that Pereira was already in trouble does not retroactively legalize the illegal contact, just as an opponent being dropped does not excuse a groin kick that follows. The referee's job is to enforce the rules in the moment they are violated, not to assess the strategic situation and decide whether intervention seems warranted based on who is winning. Gane's own corner understood what he was doing. His adjustment from round 1 to round 2, keeping pressure, not letting Pereira have the center of the cage, circling to deny the left hook while dropping the level, was genuinely excellent cornering and genuine tactical execution. The illegal strikes do not erase that. But they also do not disappear because the performance surrounding them was impressive. The broader Pereira analysis from this fight points to a specific and important question about the weight class move. The working theory throughout fight week was that Pereira moving to heavyweight would make him bigger and more powerful without sacrificing significant speed, because his natural frame was always too large for 185 and 205. What the fight against Gane suggests is that the speed sacrifice was real and was larger than the pre-fight analysis accounted for. When Pereira was fighting at middleweight and light heavyweight, he was consistently the most physically imposing man in the room, the biggest, the strongest, the man whose natural size gave him leverage and power advantages that compounded the effects of his technical ability. At heavyweight, he was not the biggest man. He was not the fastest man. And the system that made him a 2-division champion, the system built around being the most physically dominant presence in the exchange, was operating without the physical dominance component for the first time in his UFC career. This does not mean the heavyweight experiment is over or that it was a mistake. It means the specific version of the experiment, arriving at 251 pounds, potentially heavier than optimal, may have overcorrected. The question his camp is now asking is whether a version of Pereira that competes at 240 to 245, carrying less overall mass but preserving more of the speed that his system requires, would produce a different result against the same opponent. That is a question with a legitimate answer, and it is the question that determines whether Pereira returns to heavyweight or drops back to 205, where the physical advantages that his system depends on are restored. For Gane, the path forward is clear and commercially powerful. Tom Aspinall for the unification. Paris in September. A fight between the two most technically sophisticated heavyweights in the division, with a specific set of tactical problems that Aspinall's wrestling-based system creates for Gane's movement that did not exist in the Pereira fight. Aspinall's pressure, clinch control, and ability to deny opponents the kind of lateral space that Gane's movement requires is the specific challenge that the Pereira fight did not test. Whether Gane can handle the Aspinall problem the way he handled the Pereira problem is the fight that tells us whether Sunday night represented a genuine return to championship form or an excellent performance against an opponent whose specific vulnerabilities matched Gane's specific strengths. The illegal strikes will be debated. The result will stand. And the legacy of UFC Freedom 250's co-main event is a finish that nobody can evaluate cleanly because the referee failed to do his job in the moments that mattered most.